Oh,
Okay, ka-chow. We're live. We're here. Another episode of the live stream and maybe recording. No drama, no tea, no shade if you're catching the recording of the Movement for Everybody podcast. Hey, Bestie Boos. This is Dr. Marcia, and you're listening to the Movement for Everybody podcast, the show for all the homies looking to find joy and liberation through movement. Sensational. So, we're talking Pilates. We're talking bodies. We're talking lots of good stuff. First, let's introduce everyone. I hope you know me by now, Dr. Marcia, your friendly neighborhood physical therapist, certified yoga teacher, and author of Movement for Everybody. I'm sitting in Richmond, Virginia on Powhatan land, and I am wearing my big hoop earrings because they make me feel cool, and my Beats headphones and a mauve crop top, and I'm sitting in front of my coffee table at home. And I'll let Sonia introduce herself next.
hey everybody. Sonia R Price Herbert, founder of Black Girl Pilates, Pilates instructor, social worker, new Masters of Social Work. Thank you very much.
Period.
Um, period. And also the mother of a master's in mental health counseling,
Mm.
period. Um, I am sitting here in Austell, Georgia. I'm not sure who this is the land of, but I'll acknowledge whoever it was, which is probably not us. Um, what's the other thing? I'm
Visual
sitting here
description.
on my computer. I have on my high school t-shirt from 1987. It was reunion. Reunion, not no, this is not from 1987, but reunion. Um, several years, I think 25 years later. I'm wearing some very large glasses from Warby Parker. I have three piercings, one in my nose. Well, four actually, one in my nose, three in my ears. I'm sitting at my desk in my two-bedroom apartment. Um, and I have freckles and I'm very cute.
I
Thank you for
love it.
having me.
My
All
name is
right.
Rachel Reis. I'm a Pilates instructor, and then I also work in higher education, supporting researchers. And I'm currently in San Francisco on Ohlone land, I believe. And I'm sitting in my apartment, and I live in Soma. Soma's like at the base of Potrero, kind of in the flatland area. And then I am wearing I don't even know, is this brown? This is like it's almost like terracotta, but
It's
it's
Terracotta.
giving terracotta.
no
Yeah. Yeah.
terracotta. It actually has horses on it. It's quite embarrassing. I'll keep them lower. Um, and then I don't even ride horses. I just thought this was cute. Sometimes we think stuff's cute in the past, and later on we're like, what? Okay, Rachel. And then I have my hair down and just let it naturally dry today. I also have a nose piercing, and I'm just really excited to be here with this group of people. And behind me is a reformer, a springboard, some kettlebells and plant, and then a ball, stability ball. I mean, stability balls, they're just of the best. So yeah.
All right. Well, I'm Lindsay Strobble. My pronouns are she, her. I am on Anishinaabe land, just outside the Minneapolis area, about as far west as you can go and still technically be in a metro area. Um, I have thick glasses on. I've got my headset. It's Minnesota, so I actually have a wool blue sweater on because it's still cold here. Um, Behind me, I've got some bookshelves because I like to keep a permanent collection of all my favorites behind me, close to me. I call myself a student advocate for Pilates. I have done my comprehensive training, but I'm not fully certified yet. Um, Full time, I work in the healthcare insurance industry. We're just going to call that a means to an end and leave it at that.
And
Did I
leave
hit
it at
everything?
that. I believe so.
Okay.
A plus. If we're giving out gold stars, everyone gets one. What? Good job, class. All righty. So let's get into some yapping and some chatting. So when I think about Pilates, I think it's at a very like intersection of the way I like to categorize movement, which is like everything is intentional, right? But there's the joyful stuff that you do just because you like it. And then there's the stuff that you do because like you kind of have to. Right. And I feel like Pilates is kind of an interesting intersection because it could be either or. So I would love to know for each of you, where did it start for you? Was it a means to an end? Was it my knee hurts, I need to get stronger? Or was it like this contraption looks cool and I'm going to have a great time? I would love to know.
What if it was just the universe pounding it into your head until you finally went?
So you just walked outside and somebody slapped you with a reformer.
But essentially, I'm the first one in my family to go to college. I moved from Tacoma, Washington to Seattle to go to the University of Washington. And I was a transfer from community college. All this was like a really big deal to me. Even though I was born in Seattle, I was essentially going back to where I was like from in ways. And I'm the first one to like go and do that. And I lived above a Pilates studio. And I was like looking in the window sometimes when they were like off. And I was like, I don't know what that is. That looks weird. And everyone in there just didn't look like people that would interact with me in positive ways. And I was making assumptions and I was projecting on them because I almost failed high school because of PE, because I was tortured by a PE teacher. And so I had a really bad, nasty relationship with movement. And I was like, I can't do it. These people will reject me. And I was like in my studies, like hunched over, neck hurt if I moved, was like kind of not in a great place. Ended up in grad school in San Francisco, living next door to another Pilates studio. Is it not? That was like the universe was like, if you don't go in this place, you will never lift your head up. My head was here, I was like in a pain, and I was always just like this. And I was in grad school, and I was like trying to people please and prove that I was like a worthwhile human being to exist on this planet, you know, and just putting all this stuff on myself. And I finally graduated. I did a campaign. I worked my first campaign, working 60 hours a week for a ballot measure. And we won. It was the first time I ever like launched Cruise of Canvassers, realized like I'm a people manager. I can, you know, plus I can meet numbers because I have anxiety. But when I was done, I was like hunched over in pain. I was like working 16 hours a day. I was like all about the bottom line because I was trying to pay off my student loans. I'm like still in that mess. And I was just trying to like achieve, you know, and I was in so much pain. We were done with the campaign and I looked next door and I was like, I just have to go. Well, it burnt down. The studio burnt down.
Oh,
The literal studio burnt down.
This is a tittillating story so
I was
far.
going to
Wow,
say,
I
my
am
goodness,
grasping
what an
my
origin
pearls.
story.
It literally burnt down. Okay. And then it was around the corner at a church. And I was like, I don't know about this. I'm not going to go to a church to do Pilates. So I gave in. I went to a class. I went to 2 different classes. My first class was actually an advanced reformer class. She spoke French in parts. I didn't know there were French words in Pilates. I was scared, nervous. She said, you know, take a springboard back class. I think this is a little bit better. You essentially were in the wrong class and we should have told you that. And she's like, but you tried. And I was like, she was nice about it. She wasn't like, you were a failure. And then I did a springboard class. The person told me that there was a book called Pilates for Dummies, and it was by Ellie Herman. And I was so offended. Am I a dummy? But then I read the book and I realized that Ellie Herman had created that studio I was at. And that's why they were having me read the book because I was asking so many questions after class because I'm a little sponge and I was like annoying them. So they were like, just read this book and go away. And then I ended up working the front desk on Sundays only because I have a full-time job and I was like doing other stuff with my life. And I was like helping run a Democratic like advocacy group and doing other stuff. And I just ended up in this group, this community who encouraged me to learn about Pilates and kind of took me in. And even though like there's a lot more to that, you know, because you all know dealing with Pilates studios, there's a lot. People come from backgrounds of like they're a former gymnast and they're former dancers. They've been coached since they were kids. Not great, you know? So there's a lot there, but like, I'm grateful because in my life, I would have never found Pilates. Nothing would have led me to Pilates but college and being the first one in my family to go to college. I know the only reason I have access to Pilates, the only reason I'm in these spaces is because of my formal education brought me to different cities that had Pilates studios, and that's what ignited me on this. And like, it's weird to say because of what Pilates looks like. It looks like this elite thing, but I know, like, I wouldn't even have the life I have right now. I wouldn't be able to check into my breath. And I know I seem like really animated, but I'm so much more calmer than I used to be. And it's Pilates that did this for me, you know, and Pilates
Hell
helps
yeah,
me like
that's nice.
reset. But like, that's the universe was like, learn Pilates or be bent over and in pain.
Okay. Quite the origin story.
I mean, mine is somewhat similar. I was in PT because yoga broke me, and what I didn't know, but I had diagnosed shortly after it broke me, is I have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, so I'm hypermobile, super bendy. And I was in PT to fix all my issues, and my physical therapist was like, "Hey, you might want to, instead of yoga, because not only was it like a physical practice, but it was very mental for me. Like I have a lot of anxiety. It's a good way to just kind of shut everything else in the world down and kind of connect with your breath and your body and really feel what's going on for you." But she said, give Pilates a try. There happened to be a club Pilates opening up near me. I walked in, I think within the first week that they had opened. So basically everybody was new. Um, so that was actually a really great introduction for me because we were all kind of starting from the same place. I think within probably a year of starting, I started to recognize that there were elements of Pilates that didn't know how to work with my particular body type because I'm in a larger body, which is what encouraged me to, just from like a self-advocacy standpoint, want to go to teacher training to understand the foundation so I can figure out for myself, how can I make this practice work better for my body? And 10 years later, here we are.
Okay, love to see it.
Well, for me, 19 years ago in 2006, I just happened to run into it. I had my daughter was a dancer, and one of my close friends who I was actually assisting at the time at the dance school told me about this thing called Pilates. And I was like, I don't even know what that is and what does it do? And he's like, oh, it's for your core. And I was like, well, I already have a strong core anyway, because I mean, I've always been like a what is flying around my nose? Um, I've always been a lifter, so I was like, oh, whatever. So he's like, well, you should come and try it. It's great. He told me who was teaching it, who was my daughter's ballet teacher, who is also I've known her. She is my first Pilates teacher.
Wow.
So I learned in a black school with black people with a black teacher, which is amazing, especially for the black community. That's unusual. Um, so I said, well, let me try it, whatever. I went and couldn't do a lot of the exercises, and I'm very competitive, and so I was just like, no, I'm gonna keep coming
This
back.
won't do.
Like I'm gonna embarrass me, like I'm gonna keep doing this. And I was like, and I also feel good. And I was experiencing like just some like imbalances. I was seeing this chiropractor, a very holistic chiropractor, and I wasn't really into chiropractors to be honest, but this guy was really good. And I found myself just kept going. It's like, wow, this is great. And I wanted to get into something, some physical fitness. And if you know Sagittarius is like, we love a lot of things. We don't love a lot of people, but we love yeah, okay, you get me, Lindsay. We love a lot of things at the same time.
Yes, we do.
And we'll try to do all those things at the same time.
At the
And
same
so
time.
I wanted to do, yes, at the same time. And I wanted to do something in fitness, but I just wasn't sure what that was. And I found it in Pilates. And when I told my chiropractor what I was doing, I was like, I started doing this thing like Pilates twice a week. And boy, my body feels better. And he told me, he's like, listen, keep doing Pilates and come to me. He said, your body will change. And he was right. I was like, this white man was right. Like, he was right. And I just fell in love with it. Talked to my teacher, who is now one of the greatest to ever do it, Cynthia Shipley. I talked to her about certification, went and found a certification that you know, I did MAT first in 2007, and then the following year, because Sagittarius is want to know more, right, Lindsay? There's always more to this.
It's true.
And so we always want to know more. So I said, there's got to be more than this. So I did my comprehensive in 2007, and 18 years later, I'm here
Wow.
and running one of the greatest platforms to have ever done it and still doing it.
Absolutely. Black Girl Pilates, if y'all don't know, get into it.
Yeah.
Um, there's something everybody mentioned that we could touch on, but there's something that Lindsay mentioned that I definitely want to touch on was that yoga broke you. And I find that the conversation of yoga can be a whole different thing because the entire practice of yoga is so many things. It's not just handstands, right? And then on top of that, it's so commodified in the West. And then on top of that, people just make stuff up. Like, what are puppies doing here? I don't think that's in the Vedas. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think beer and yoga was real. Who thought that made sense? So it's like even bigger. There's so much overwhelming about fitness, but I've seen so many doctors tell people just try yoga. And then the patients will come to me and be like, I didn't know what that meant. And I'm like, yeah, girl, because it could mean anything. It could mean you're sweating in a room. It could mean you're moving slow. It could mean you're doing sound bowls. Like, it could mean anything. But whereas Pilates is a system, Pilates is these are the movements and this is what happens. Unless we're talking about the weird people on TikTok. But
and I will add that variations, and there are things added, like Kathleen Stanford Grant added a whole, lots of different pre-Pilates work and other work. So even if things aren't the exercises JP made, there are still valid movements that I still consider Pilates, that even if someone was like, so I went to a private teacher and I used a trapeze table with these different ropes, and this was all like made by Kathy Grant, and some of the pre-Pilates stuff we were doing was all, and you wouldn't see that necessarily at a studio. I was working with a classical teacher and I had only seen that stuff, but I never felt it in my body, and wow. So some of these, so yes, that's true, but I like to caveat that because also there's a lot of information about JP that was essentially stolen by someone I will not mention. And there is a whole like chunk of variations and pictures that are not accessible right now. And we actually don't know the full repertoire. And I just want to say that is like, so people will claim that what we know and that's it, but that's not exactly true. I actually seen some photos that are not public at the New York Library that someone showed me. And I realized that there are variations. So I want to always caveat that yes, there are no burpees in Pilates. No one's doing burpees. You don't, some of these things are definitely not, but there are these like obscure movements that people might not all know about because we have really fractured learning. I'm trained by Balanced Body. I had like a 2-pager on the history. I had to seek all that knowledge myself. And even sometimes like people will claim they really know something or something's in print, but we don't know. Like Joseph Pilates was an immigrant. He might have actually not fully been able to write in English like that. And he might not have written some of these texts the way they are. It might have been like a marketer. So it's like, I think we always have to remember that what we know as Pilates, there is a part that's left out to the unknown. So I do want to like leave a little opening that like maybe some of the weird stuff we do might be Pilates that we don't know, but like overarching, you're absolutely right. What's online is pretty wild. And it's also really sexually fueled. And like, this is okay. It's okay. We're sexual beings. But when Pilates becomes this thing that I don't know, that's what's selling it, like weight loss and sex is what's selling it, then it's kind of missing the point. But
The
I'm going to
aesthetic
caveat that
aspect, yeah.
because Mr. Pilates had naked pictures of himself in his studio riding horses, and he was always in his underwear, and he loved it. Was a couple decades younger than him, so it is sexual. And when people say that they want to teach like Joe, but they don't wear tighty whities and they don't smoke cigars and they don't drink like hard alcohol, I always call BS. I'm like, you're not really like Joe, because Joe probably like to have a lot more fun than you do. Sorry.
Yeah, I don't think Joe's teaching methods would fly in our current society for a variety of reasons.
So wait, can we back up for a second? Because I don't want to assume that everyone even knows what we're talking about, right? So when I say Pilates is a system, explain it to me like I'm 5. What does that even mean?
I would say there
go ahead, Lindsay, and then I'll come in.
I'd say there are foundations, there are principles, right, that Pilates is based on. So when JP created this method, he called it contrology.
Mhm.
So there's an aspect of being connected to one's breath and one's body in a way that allows us to have a lot of control over the movements and the exercises that we are performing. There's like
Mhm.
the precision aspect of it too that kind of flows into that control. And then also flow itself, right? Wanting to find
Mhm.
kind of that rhythm and the thing that makes it feel good in your body. And this is all driven right from the core, like Sonja mentioned when she was being introduced to the method. So those are kind of the foundational principles, at least as I understand them, that
Mhm.
allowed Joe to build this method of movement.
Mhm. But then there's also, and just, as Lindsay was explaining, yes, it is a system, but it's a system that includes a lot of other moving parts. So, like nowadays, um, you're seeing so many different things on Blue Ivy's internet, and I know that she is managing us out here, but she can't manage everyone. And so what we're seeing, things Pilates has evolved in its own way, but in for good reasons and for not so good reasons. And so when we talk about a system, we're not just talking about like the principles of Pilates that we've all learned. We're also talking about pieces of equipment. So Pilates alone is not mat Pilates. Pilates alone is not a reformer. Pilates alone is not a magic circle. Um, Pilates is, there are several pieces of equipment. I mean, several, and some things we don't even use because they're just not worth
Yeah.
it. Some things are just, it's cool, but we don't really need it, but people are trying to sell it, but he will remain unnamed. Um, and so not only is it a system of exercises, but there is a system of exercises that go on all these pieces of equipment. And Joseph Pilates, brilliant, although racist, but brilliant. He created something for everything, head to toe. Like there is something for your neck all the way down to your feet. And that's, props to the man. That's pretty fucking brilliant. And so that's the system that we talk about. And if you experience that system, then you can experience the change in your body, not aesthetically, as Rachel said. We're not here trying to get people to lose weight and build muscle mass. Like that's not what Pilates is about. It's so much more than what is told out here, in the sexualization and things like that. That's not what it's about. And so the system is it includes all of that plus so much more. It includes we are part of the system because the system cannot work unless there is a physical body there using that system. So we are the beginnings and the end of that system
Well, and I
along
think it's,
with
oh, sorry
yeah.
for interrupting. I was just going to say too, I think it's important to remember, right, that this system was originally conceived of as a method of rehabilitation for injured soldiers or folks, in internment camps, for dancers once JP came over to New York and they needed to figure out how to fix certain things from injuries. So while we love to see people making beautiful shapes and doing incredibly difficult, challenging moves on the internet, that is not the foundation of Pilates either. It's all of those unsexy, very basic. Sometimes you can hardly even see the movement, and you don't understand unless you're feeling it in your body.
Which
I
can
would
take
argue
years.
that that is so much more what Pilates is
Mhm.
than the influencers, who are trying to sell us yoga outfits that are coordinating and they've got the whole studio set up and all of that. Like that is extraneous to the practice itself.
It's just the
Right.
aesthetic evolution of, it being tied to other fitness. But really, Joseph Pilates built a system that was all about building a mind-body connection and getting your body to move in more efficient ways, and you building body awareness, proprioception, and the ability to learn to adjust and reposition. But what was really smart about the system is there's actually families of exercises. So throughout the different, so we have mat, we have reformer, we have the Cadillac, which is also called trapeze. That's a double name for the same thing. So contemporary might call it a Cadillac, classical call it a trapeze table. So we have the wounded chair, but we also have, remember there's a couple weird names. So there's going to be some scarier names, okay? So I'm going to let you pre-know that. So we have the electric chair, we have the guillotine. I'm not playing, and I've never used a guillotine, but I have some of the movements in my body, regardless from just playing on other things that are like it. But he was a weirdo too, you know? So we have like, you know, just the magic circle. And that sounds so weird. When I heard it was like a magic circle, I'm just like coming from like a skeptical, like research-based, you know, methodology background, and then going and someone being like, hand me a magic circle. But then when you use the magic circle and you realize what oppositional force is in your body, and you're like, I could freaking roll around forever. I'm a coffee table. I can just like be, you know what I mean? Like, and I love that you laughed about it, because it really is, right? Like, I never thought I could do, like when Sonia was saying that when she first started, she wanted to keep going because some of it was hard. Same. I'm a little type A, and I'm healing, but you know, I was like, I can do this. Just give me a minute. And you know what I mean? And then, but you realize that there's like deep-seated bias within the practice. You know, I have a larger butt, and I was told, oh, this can be harder because of your butt. And it was like it's not harder because my butt, I just needed to use it differently. I needed to just maneuver a little different. And instead of working with me, because some of my teachers didn't have that same thing, you know? And so you just get a sense that maybe people aren't always trying to figure out how to make the work for other people. And you know, there's this paternalistic and Puritan ideology that I think is in Pilates, this like rigidity. And I'm not calling I'm not saying that all classical are like that. That's not true, because I work with a classical trainer and he's not like that. We will really try different things when needed, right? And I don't think everyone across the board is one generalized way. I'm never going to say that. But when I engage in certain spaces, I feel like there's only one way to do a thing, which isn't true. And that, you know, I heard someone recently say that when you modify the movement, you're diluting it. And I think that is not only like really nasty, but it's like very like eugenics leaning to me, and just like, you know, anyone who's making a dichotomy of easier versus hard makes me really upset, because that's really preferential. And you're trying to make other people feel bad because they're struggling with something that you don't struggle with. And instead of positioning yourself to be better, I think talking about what it lands in your body, how you are, you know, working through it, and then talking with them. The greatest cues that I have ever learned, I have learned from my clients, not from my mentors. I've learned from working directly with people and talking to them through the struggle, through in you know, they're frustrated. I'm, you know, trying to, you know, make them not frustrated. I'm, you know, really trying to work with them there where they're at. But also there's this, I want people to be comfortable and work with themselves and be somatic and have body autonomy. But I also want to push people a little bit, because I know I need a little push too. And I really feel like it's in a way that's really careful. I try to be really careful with that lens, because I know that if I was pushed too much, I might kind of back off a little bit. So I don't know. I just think that a lot of these spaces are really kind of, I don't want to say culty, but they're expecting a lot. Like, I injured myself in Pilates studios when I started because I was trying to live up to a teacher's pace. I had a teacher who would make all 7 reformers move at the same time. And she would want an even better rep each time. And if you're in that space and you're not healed and you're a type A people pleaser, you could end up injuring yourself. And, you know, if you injure yourself in these spaces, then you wonder, is this really about feeling better in your body? Or is this about getting props from your teacher that's like, oh, wow, you can do this thing, you know? And I think for me, that became really the push for me to rethink how I was teaching. Because, you know, you do workshops, you do your teacher training, you do continuing ed, and it's all from a lens. And I have a very different background than the vast majority of teachers that I've interacted with. I do not come from a dance world. I could barely lift my head up when I started. I, you know, literally had pains in everywhere in my body and could barely put my foot in a strap because it hurt so bad. And so I remember that I had to work through my own ego to even get to a place to start slowing down and connecting with what actually feels good in my body. And I feel like in a lot of Pilates studios, you don't have that opportunity to slow down because people think if I'm not sweating, if I'm not moving quick, if I don't feel pain, then it's not worth it. But really, that's not giving you the opportunity to check in the inventory with how you feel as you move and really building that relationship. Because being in a group class, you can still do that. You can still build that relationship, but not if you're just focused on the teacher and the people around you. You really have to center everything yourself. And a lot of teachers don't like that because when people in class move at their own pace or do something different, they, even if they say it, they might not always like it. They might be judging it, or they might be doing things that they don't even realize with other body kind of signals, you know? And like, I've seen it where people like roll their eyes or just, they're just like, why did someone do this? I just, as teachers, we need to remember that people see us, people hear us. And, you know, if you're not really here to motivate teachers and this is just a performance for you, or you just landed in here because you've been working out your whole life and you actually don't like people, like these are actually toxic spaces, you know? And I think this is everywhere because some people just kind of go on paths and don't really reflect. But I feel like I've had a couple teachers who maybe like didn't really like teaching, and, you know, in same through, you know, in school. And I just really hope everyone like checks in with themselves. If you don't like people, being a Pilates teacher is not for you.
Yeah, do something else. You don't have to do this job. I think there's also a point of like, it doesn't really matter the method of movement you're doing. At the end of the day, we are all programmed with white supremacist ideals. So it doesn't matter if it's Pilates, it doesn't matter if it's Iyengar yoga, it doesn't matter if it's ballet, it doesn't matter if it's bar. At the end of the day, if we didn't take time to be like, it doesn't matter if I'm skinny, it doesn't matter if I can do the hardest move, it doesn't matter if I move differently, then that's gonna bleed through your teaching. It doesn't matter what you're doing. But the problem is, as the person taking the class, as the person doing the fitness, if you don't realize that, if you don't enter a space like this Pilates teacher is just a person and people can suck. If you don't walk in with that attitude, you're going to be like, I hated this class. I felt uncomfortable. I'm never doing Pilates again.
You know, what the most part, I mean, going back to the whole system of, you know, that Pilates being a system, but I think that we forget, particularly as teachers, many times, and many times as students, because I feel like you should always be a student of your craft, whether you teach it or not. Um, the most important thing for Pilates, and this is for exercise, if you don't breathe, you don't move. Most people come into the Pilates studio, come into Pilates, and they absolutely have no, you know, you think because you woke up this morning and you breathe in that you know, but many people do not know how to breathe. I didn't. I didn't. And from what we hear in history, Joseph Pilates, he had asthma. And so that was also part of it. He has a breathalyzer, a thing that helps you with your breath. That's why I said he has things from head to toe. And so this, you know, I think if we, the simplest thing that we think is not necessarily part of the system of Pilates or the system of exercise is breathing. I don't care if you're powerlifting, God knows I'm a powerlifter. If I don't breathe, I cannot pull that weight, push it, squat it, nothing. If I'm going to do yoga, there's no way I'm going to be able to stand in warrior one or tree pose or none of that. Like, breath is a prerequisite to life, period. That is the main part of the system besides us. But the very first part, the first prerequisite, and I think he says this in and tell me if I'm wrong, Rachel or Lindsay, in his book, Return to Life, is breath. That is the most important thing. And that is beyond racial lines. Everybody got to breathe. Everybody.
Well,
And
and
it's
if you
how we
can't
engage
scale
people.
yourself back to the point where you're willing to explore the breath, to Rachel's point, there's an element of ego there that is going to negatively affect your practice until you're
Correct.
really willing to break all that down for yourself. Because ultimately, it has to be about how we experience it, because it's going to differ from everybody's perspective, because we're all different, right? But yeah, the breath,
and that's
if you
beyond
can't,
aesthetics.
Yeah, breathing.
Yeah,
And
there's nothing
life,
cute about it.
There's nothing
There's
sexy
nothing.
about breathing.
Yeah,
And
there's
that's how
nothing
you
cute
conquer
about
the
it.
workout. That's
Yeah,
that's everything.
Yep.
yeah.
And the breath is your engagement of core. People are like, you need to do crunches, you need to do this. If you just stand and breathe and you do focused breath, you can literally engage your core and you can feel it. And
When
it's
I get asked
powerful.
about like cueing for people, how do I cue somebody to do this? Well, are you cueing them to breathe first and foremost? Because from that breath, there's a lot of muscular activation that happens because your body just knows how to do that. So if we don't trust our bodies to know how to like move and behave based on breath alone, again, we're missing that foundational thing.
And
Plus, you need
there's a
oxygen
thought that don't
to
teach.
Yeah.
connect to the blood.
Yep.
Mhm.
Because then if you're not breathing and oxygen's going to the blood, then nothing moves. So what are we really doing? You're standing there and, maybe you're
Mhm.
gonna unalive yourself. But I mean, so that's why it's so important. And I feel like we've lost that part of the system of not only just Pilates, but exercise, period, is the importance of breathing. Breathing will, like you said, Lindsay and Rachel, breathing will change your life. You can change your posture, you can change your mindset, you can go from anxious to not anxious, from depressed to not as depressed, you know, tired to not tired. All it is, that's all it is. And if
Yeah.
we could just go back to that main part, and he was so smart in saying that breath is a prerequisite. If we could go back there and start there, that'll change people's lives and mindsets.
Mm.
Because that is the system of Pilates. That's the system of exercise, period.
Yeah, as
Because
it
if you
should
ain't
be.
breathing, ain't nobody gonna be able to move nothing
Not at
or do
all. I want to
anything,
share a
you
comment
know?
from the live stream
Yes.
that the comment from the live stream is yes, people think they need to be flexible or coordinated to enter the space, but really the most challenging thing can be the breathing.
Truth.
Mhm.
And people do think that. People also think they need to look a certain way, be a certain size, have a certain fitness level to go into spaces. And, that's why it's really important to reach out to studios and kind of get a sense of what the atmosphere is. Is this a place where they will work with you where you're at and they will help you adapt the work if needed? And is this like a positive environment? I also wanted to say, and I don't want to like say the organization, but there are some contemporary organizations out there who actually don't teach people to cue breath. I don't want to call out the whole country because there's like a country that I know where tons of people are trained, and I've communicated with them and they're like, yeah, no, I would never cue breathing and I don't use the word stabilize. And I think that is really weird. And I'm just going to say that it is okay to stabilize. It's okay to talk about instability and stability, and it is okay to cue breath. And let's just say like, maybe they're down under. I don't know. And I'm not saying everybody is, but I have dealt with some organizations that were a little
Wow,
bit
the
telling
tea is
me
exceptional.
they were essentially like, oh no, I wouldn't want to cue breathing. I might stress someone out. No, you're gonna do the opposite. And then they were like, stabilizing sounds like a naughty word. And I'm like, I don't know how it is.
That's interesting.
So I think,
Mhm.
when you're looking into Pilates, I think it's really important to do some digging. So look into the organization's founders and look at their connection to Pilates, because there is this new push in Pilates for people who literally hate Pilates to work in this industry and essentially push this idea that Pilates teachers don't have the right training, they don't have the right, background knowledge, blah, 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 and that it should all be body mechanics. This is where they're wrong. Pilates teachers are not physical therapists unless they are a doctor of physical therapy. And then you're a doctor of physical therapy into Pilates teacher. That's a whole nother ballgame. I'm talking about just certified in Pilates. You should not be giving any medical advice to anyone. You don't diagnose anyone. You refer out, refer out, refer out. And you never try to claim that you know more than you do and all of that. Like I have clients where they see a physical therapist and we talk about their movements and I add some in, and then they talk about how it's working and we adjust, and they're working with a medical doctor. I would never work outside my scope or claim that I could do anything outside my scope. And there are little people out here that are like, well, if you understand body mechanics and blah, 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 you're not a doctor. And I understand that like people, like the experts aren't always experts because we have biases and inequity and access and opportunity are different from different people. I'm not saying experts are across the board, but we can't be anti-intellectualism across the board. We have to vet people. We have to be skeptical, but just because someone's the head of an organization, look in their background. Are they even tied in Pilates? They might have just strolled into Pilates one day and they actually have no like cross connections to other organizations or associations, and they're actually not tied into the community. And if you look at their rhetoric, it's really anti-Pilates. Like if you really dive in, but it's marketed in a way like, oh, you're going to learn body mechanics better and you're going to be better than other Pilates teachers. But that's not true. If you want better mechanic training, then do some of those continuing education things, but don't try to work outside your scope.
Well, I think it's important to mention too, though, that this concept of body mechanics is based very much in the white male, this is how we do our medical research concept, right? We're not looking at the so-called not ideal, not Pilates body types when we're determining that this is the ultimate be all of body mechanics and movement mechanics. So there always has to be room to understand, okay, where is this propaganda coming from, first of all, to make us feel like there is only one right answer for any given body. That just can't be the answer. Is I was taught this one thing, so I know it, and that's the end of this conversation. So yeah, I think to your point, Marcia, like it's all steeped in racism and all of the stuff that we don't want to be carrying forward as Pilates continues to be become a more popular practice, right? We have to understand, and I think we are kind of hitting a point of the Pilates reckoning. I think it's happening now where we're starting to see a lot of the toxicity coming out and being called out. I mean, certainly it's happened even in the past couple of weeks on TikTok. Somebody says something and then the Pilates world just blows up because there is so much hatred, honestly, at the root of it. We have to understand that ultimately Pilates is about the human being in front of us. And I think that's being lost.
Yeah, the plot is definitely lost. So what would you say to somebody that is trying to figure out maybe Pilates could be a thing? How can they even discern that this is a real Pilates place? And how can they discern that it'll be a safe place?
Ooh.
Because I see,
Oh
even
my
as
God.
me, as a physical
Yeah.
therapist, and I've tried different levels of movement and different this and different that, I'll see like one Pilates teacher will be like, well, don't go to a place that has rainbow colored springboards. And I'm like, what does that mean to me? I don't know what that means. I don't know what that means.
I mean, I know what I
Give me
look
something
for.
practical.
I know what I look for. I like to look at their social media, their marketing, all of that good stuff. Do I see actual human bodies, or do I see the concept of what a Pilates body is? If I'm not seeing diversity, I'm not interested. I need to feel like I can relate not only to the instructors, but also to the other people that I'm going to be practicing with. So that is one of the primary things that I look for is I want to see how they represent themselves to the world.
Okay, that's a good one. Sonia, you had one? I saw a little.
I have so many thoughts on it. I mean, I agree with Lindsay in that, going to see what folks, go to their website, look at their Instagram. And one of the things that, you know, I told a lot of like my students when I was, during my times of doing anti-racism, which I still kind of do, I just haven't done it in a while. Um, is like it's important what your Instagram, your social media looks like, because when people come there to see like, is this a place that I want to go to? What are they seeing? Because I've gone on and looked at people's, websites, and I was like, as a Black person, I damn sure wouldn't go there because no. And who would want to go there, with this, with how Pilates studios showing up these days, it's like this very like sterile, environment, like everybody's got on white and tan and all kinds of weird,
Sad
stuff
beige.
like that. And it's, you can't,
Yeah, why are
yes.
all of these websites
And
beige?
it's,
What's going on?
okay. So, I mean, it's these, and I kind of get it in a way. I know where they're going, but then it really just makes things not so, um, not so open to anyone wanting to walk into that studio. Looking at the teachers to see, are there diverse body types? Is there someone who is in a larger body that's teaching? Because that may be their best teacher. These little skinny hoes, that just because they little don't mean that they teach well, right? And stuff like that. It doesn't matter the body type, it is the teacher themselves. And so, you kind of want to look at those things, you want to see what their reputation is. And sometimes it just takes actually going there to experience to see if that is the experience that you want to continue with. As far as like, I think Rachel was alluding to this about, whether it's four springs or a red, a blue, a yellow, and a green. Honey, it doesn't matter. What really is going to make the experience is if you have a knowledgeable, caring, instructor who wants to give you the best possible Pilates experience for you, whether it's on a damn uh, you know, Grotz reformer, balanced body, Bozzy, whatever, whatever.
Yeah, the
It
equipment
doesn't
doesn't matter.
matter.
It's person.
They
Yeah,
know
I
what
mean,
to do
as long
with the
as it's like,
springs. Who cares what color the
right.
springs are?
Yeah, because listen, I'll teach on anything. So not anything, but I mean, I'll teach on anything that is, a Pilates piece of equipment or whatever. It doesn't matter color springs, whatever. I'll figure it out. But that really doesn't matter. What matters is the experience. Because if you provide your student with, you want them to, if you had a great, you got into Pilates, hopefully because it changed your life. And so you want
Mm,
to, that same experience that you had as a teacher, you want to be able to give your students those experiences. You want them to be able to experience Pilates in its fullest, not for aesthetics and all that shit like that's bullshit, but you want them to experience what it's like its healing properties for you, because those healing properties are individual for each student that walks in there. And so you want to feel those kinds of things when you walk into a Pilates studio. That's what you want to feel. You want that experience. I want to give, for 18 years, I've tried to give my students an experience because that's what I wanted. That's what I got. And so therefore, it is my job to give them the experience that they deserve, right? And
mm.
those exercises that I feel are the best for them. That's what you want to look for in a Pilates studio, in a Pilates instructor. All that other shit, the, ethereal, she was a fairy. You don't want all that. It ain't worth it. It's just not. I
Well,
love
and
that
Yeah.
song, by the way.
building on
But
that and kind of going back to something that Rachel said, scope of practice, right? Are they making practices that they can't keep? Are you promising long, lean muscles, which has way more to do with
wow.
genetics than it does with
Trigger,
what
my
Pilates
trigger.
can do for you? Are we promising weight loss? Because that is not something that Pilates can guarantee. Are we talking about dieting? Because that is completely beyond the scope, unless somebody is a registered dietitian or whatever. None of those things should be included in the practice or in promises that they are making to you about what the practice can do for your
For
life.
your teacher training. Should
Amen.
not be
Yeah.
talking about weight loss in your teacher training.
So
If it is calling out.
again, make sure that what they are saying to you is something that is realistically accomplishable. If you're in a studio 2 hours a week, you're going twice a week, which is a pretty standard, I would say, schedule for somebody.
Yeah.
Just be
Yeah.
aware that, of course, there's marketing involved here. In addition to the sad beige like studios, are we suggesting that we can do things for you that you cannot do without making significant life changes?
And this
Yeah,
is
that's wild.
to talk about the business aspect of it. And just like, that's exactly what it started making me think about. These are businesses. People are trying to make money. Their employees, want clientele in. So there's also this like sales end of it. But with that, in America being at like the highest level of being like scamming, right? And scams being, you know, more preying upon people than ever before. We have to deliver the service that we're claiming to give. And there are so many that aren't. And I think that's why it becomes these fancy movements, because if you're so disoriented and tired and dehydrated, you might be a sort of high and not literally, you know, high off of dehydration and like delirious a little bit. And you might think, oh, that was so great because you don't have any other kind of thing. But what Sonja was saying about how she works with clients, it's that aha. That's okay. I'm just going to call it a drug. There's a drug. So my why, my like really deep why, besides like not having a good time in PE, besides all these like unfortunate experiences in different gym like environments, my why comes down to my clients. You know, they light up. There's this, they find joy in their movement, in this movement process. And it's like it moves from being a chore to being fun or being feeling good. And they
Or
get
it just feels like, wow, my body makes sense.
yeah,
Mhm,
and
mhm.
they have these different moments. Like there's these key movements in Pilates that like if it's a first session, like after we go through like some basic things that I'll do with people, there's some key movements because I know they're gonna get the sense of relief that they might not have ever had. Like let's say one of them is roll down using a rollback bar on the trapeze. You know, when you come back up. Sorry, like it's just like, and sometimes it can just like just like if you've never done that before, or a side. I used to joke with my clients that if everyone did side bends on the trapeze table, there wouldn't be road rage because we'd be like, are you kidding? Pass me in the car. Pass me. Everybody pass me. I don't care. I did my side bends. And it was a joke, but they were like, yeah, when I leave here, I don't care how long it's going to take me to get home. I don't care what's in the way. I don't care what traffic comes because I'm in a different high. This isn't dehydration, delirium. I overexerted myself. This is like,
This isn't
It's the
punishment that I
centering.
earned.
It's the centering and the organization of the body and
and
the
it's
thoughts and all
somatic.
of that.
And most of us, like, we live in this high stress American corporatized bull crappy, and it's frustrating and it's hard, and we're all dealing with so much stress. And at the intersections of who we are, that stress increases. And at the end of it, in our literally healthcare system is not that. You know, I just seen a stat that rich European or no, poor Europeans outlive rich Americans. And this is like tied to the medical system and the outcomes in actual medical system. And it was really interesting to me because I was like, well, you know, even being rich in the United States, if you engage in the medical system, you might get subpar care too. So, you know, like, and this is what it is. Zero sum affects everybody at the end of the day. And that's why there's a big disconnect with people who lack empathy completely and compassion for other people. And they don't understand that taking care of people in need means maybe one day they'll be taken care of in their need. They are not even seeing that. They're not seeing that this is like a community, and a community means lifting up others. And it's not even about the reciprocity per se. It's just being a part of that and being able to be there for other people. Like that's at the end of the day what excites me, you know, in my work offline. I'm a support staff. I support people who are doing really amazing things, and I get to cheer them on, you know, and my name doesn't go on a lot of this stuff and all of that. I'm a background. And same with my Pilates. My clients don't walk out inside and go, Rachel Reis is who trained me. That's why I'm sitting up, or that's why I'm feeling good. You know, maybe word of mouth that comes up in conversation. But it's really about like they get to move. This becomes theirs, and we get to cheer them on in that. And someone did that for me, even if it was a little bit of a mind mess with, and I had to still navigate because maybe that person had some, you know, not so great ideology around fitness, and I had to still work through and unpack that. I'm sorry, I talk with my hands. It's distracting probably. But I can't stop. And I just think that at the end of the day, if you're given something, a gift like movement, I don't know where I'd be without movement, without being able to take a second and just recenter myself, connect in my breath. And, you know, I think it sounds weird and really like in the air when I'm like, I don't know where I'd be, but it's serious. Like we need this as humans. We need to breathe. We need to move. We need to adjust our body and connect with our spine. And every aspect of life just about does not allow that. your work,
Yeah.
home,
I think there's
society.
something that one of my book events that still sticks with me is that we were talking about movement. And someone in the audience said, well, you know, when we were kids, it was just play and we understood we needed to get outside and just play. And then somehow when we became adults, it became punishment, it became weight loss, it became aesthetics, it became ability. We don't really know why that changed. Where did that come from? Why are we there? What are we doing here? What happened to just playing? Why aren't we frolicking anymore?
It's really interesting that you say that because something I've started doing in my life because, you know, I'm a corporate warrior, 40 hours plus a week, and I'm sitting in front of my computer is when I need to take a break, I tell my boss, my coworkers, whoever, I need to go outside and play for a little bit. And it kind of breaks their brains a little bit to approach just taking a break and recentering from kind of that childlike message. But I think it is really valuable to reconceive of what we're doing for ourselves and bring maybe some of that joy back, or at least the intention, right? So anyway, that just connected with me.
You
Thank you.
know, I was also, I mean, going back to like um your initial conversation about, kind of what to look for in
Okay.
studios. And what I've been telling the folks that I've been certifying is I said, listen, just like you had this experience with lives and change your life and you want to change people's lives. Here's the thing. When your student walks out of the studio, you don't want them walking out as if they've been hit by a Mack truck. That's not how Pilates works. I said you want them to walk out and go, my God, I can do the rest of my day
Mm-hmm.
because I
Mhm.
feel good. That is the result of doing a really great session. And you may not have done much, but you did a lot.
Mhm.
But when you walked out, and I think Joseph Pilates describes this as almost like a rain or a washing over your body. And so, when you jump in the shower and you get underneath the hot shower, if you like hot water like me, you let that water go over you, you done lathered yourself up and then that water comes. When you get out of the shower or the bathtub, don't you feel refreshed? That's the difference between Pilates and many other exercise methods is that when you walk out, it's as if the rain has washed everything off and you are refreshed and then you can go about your day. So that's when you know that you're in a Pilates studio as well, because Pilates is not about you going there and getting your ass kicked so bad
Mm-hmm.
Oh
that you're
man.
crawling out of there. Now, if you want that, you go to HIIT, right? You want that, then
You go to
like my
CrossFit.
power
Yeah,
Yeah,
like
just call
yeah,
it something else.
yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, then
Estrogen.
do that. But that is not the Pilates experience. Every one of my clients should walk out of here and say, man, I felt like shit when I walked in, but boy, when I walked out, I was just like, I could breathe. I was paying attention. My body feels better. I don't feel as tight. That's what you want your folks to. And if you don't have that feeling when you walk out of a Pilates studio, I'm not sure where you went or what they
Mm-hmm.
did, but that is not the feeling that you
It
should
wasn't
have.
it. It
Well,
wasn't
I
it.
think
Thank you
it's
for
That
that.
ain't
important
it.
too to like call out that not every Pilates instructor has to be for every client or student. Like we are going to connect better with some instructors than we will with others. Some cues are going to work better for us
Mhm,
than others. So as somebody who
mhm,
likes to continually learn, that's why I find benefit in attending classes with all kinds of instructors because they have a different take and a different perspective on that. So we can continue to learn and build and figure out what works best for us, and then pay that forward when we are working with other folks. But
And share
mhm,
information. If you have a good experience, talk about it, tell people about it, because I think it's so natural for us to talk about our negative experiences because that's kind of how our brain is
because
wired.
that's what the internet is for.
Well, yeah, and we're
Rage
biologically
baiting.
creating patterns with our brains, like our brains are trying to protect us. So it makes sense that we focus like a little bit on that. But in contemporary society, it doesn't work because there's a lot of bad all the time inundated. And, when we have a good experience, we should talk about that and share the information, share what good teachers we've worked with. And then also realize people change over time. My teaching, when I was still in a studio before I started teaching fully remote, was way different, and even that environment was different. And I've adapted a lot different. And when you teach remotely, and this is the skill set that I've gained that I didn't know, I can like solve things that I never thought I could. I'll be like slight adjustment here, and they're like, oh wow, yeah, this is what needed to happen. I've fixed other people's reformers through Zoom before. Like they were like, there's this noise, and I'm like, okay, check this out. And it's like off camera because they're like under it. So, it's like there's possibility, so many more possibilities. You don't just have to go into a studio. Is online. And I do a lot of online because I have a full-time job and I do part-time school. And then I also have a business. And because of that, I have to work it in when I can. Every couple of weeks, I try to go into a studio because I like a in-person because, there's equipment that you don't have access to. I don't have a trapeze table. I don't have a ladder barrel. I don't have a wounded chair right now. So I need to go to a studio to use those things. And so I think it's important to remember that like Pilates can happen in your living room. You can watch a free YouTube and, you could even go to the library and get some Pilates books. I just don't read any of the forewords, or like you can, but just gloss over it because some of it, it's like ableist. It's like anti-fat, fat phobic, I'm just going to prepare you ahead of time that some of the forewords, just go to the movements and practice the movements, and just remember that a lot of these people come from these like deep-seated coaching backgrounds. And if you're coached as a kid, weight and size comes in. And especially if you grew up in like the 70s, 80s, 90s, it's going to be, really saturated. And oftentimes these people weren't coached in positive ways. They were actually coached in bad ways. Like even I worked with someone who did choir, and they were essentially taught to breathe wrong for choir. And so it's like, you don't know what someone comes in with. And Pilates is really about understanding someone's full kind of lifespan and where they're at. We incorporate all that. We need to know your background, because if you were injured when you were 8, that might come out. There's this, I call it, there's just things will pop out. Like if you had an injury from years ago, it might come out over time through movement. And so I think it's really important that we also remember that, yes, Pilates is meant to make you feel better. You should have these feelings. But if you're working through, you have chronic pain or there's other things going on, but like, if you have rheumatoid arthritis, different things going on, you do have to really engage that client as opposed to just focusing on what because people are different and they have these cross intersections of what's happening. And I think that that's really something important to remember, that people come with these lived experiences and they matter so much in their daily interaction.
Okay, I'm listening. Okay, I'm hearing everything. Okay. We're coming up on about an hour. But I do want to ask one more question. What's up with hot Pilates? Are we supposed to be in a heated room? What is that?
Okay,
It's
let
just
me answer
another
that.
way to punish
Let me
ourselves.
talk about that.
Are they
So-
gonna add notes?
When I first, I guess I wasn't maybe quite a year out of certification, and I was working for, what is the name of this thing? Actually, it's part of the Equinox family, but there's only 2 of them there, and they're in New York, so something yoga. But anyway, I remember they added like this hot Pilates thing because they had hot yoga there and all that stuff. And at that time, like I was probably in perimenopause, so that says that. And it was really interesting because I was just like, it's hot. And if you're closer to the front part of the room, it's even hotter, right? And so I couldn't really reconcile the fact that we're doing Pilates in this hot room. And I was like, when your body moves, there is a certain amount of heat that is built up.
It's
So you're
generated
building,
already.
yeah, you're generating heat and you're adding 110 on top of that. So what exactly is this supposed to do? Um, and I didn't really teach it that long. Now, I will say this in that I do have a former student who does teach hot Pilates. That's what he does, and he, seems to do it well. He came to my certification because he felt like he needed to know more than what he had been taught, right? So I was like, okay, cool. So I'm your person, whatever, and all this kind of stuff like that. Now, am I, you know, he knows that I will not come to his class, number one, because it's too hot for me. I'm 56 years old. I can't be, I can't be doing that, and things like that. do I feel, am I mad at him for teaching, hot Pilates? Well, no. I mean, he actually makes a lot of money from it. Okay, no problem. Is it something I would do? No. Is it true Pilates, or in the way that Joseph Pilates, if we really want to keep it a buck? No. No, it's not. No, no, it's not. What is the actual reason for? I have absolutely no idea. I don't. And this is no shade to him or
No
anybody else who
shade, no
teaches.
drama, no tea.
Yeah, and so I think that it's just it's like the whole marketing thing that we talked about earlier. Like now it's like all these tans and browns and blah 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 bodies. And then now everybody's adding like 20-pound weights plus put some weights on your ankles and then stand on top of the reformer and hold the ball on top of your head and jump on top of the box and get back on. Now it's like, all of this extra stuff. So it's one of those things. But what I do tell my students is this. I said, listen, all of these things, seem cool and great, but they are trends. They are
Mm.
trends. We're going to look around later and hot Pilates will not exist anymore. We're going to look around and there won't be like these reformer studios anymore because they are trends. But what is not a trend is actual Pilates itself, the Pilates method itself. That has stood the test of time. And I think that myself, Rachel, and Lindsay can speak to that, in that what we are doing and teaching and experiencing is Pilates in its purest form for ourselves. But these other trends, these are just trends. They're going to be gone in 2 seconds and nobody will remember them because they're
Mm.
not going to last. They are trends. So it is a trend. Would I recommend someone go to hot Pilates? Not necessarily, because we're also looking at health issues. If someone has high blood pressure, not a good idea. Other physical things, COPD. Who you gonna put them in a hot room? Like, you're not gonna put somebody in that space. So I guess I'm not trying to say, because again, I have a student who teaches hot Pilates and I know people who have taught it before. I'm not trying to say that they're terrible people for teaching it, but what I am saying is that it is just um, that all it is just it's just a trend, and it's going to be gone like tomorrow, and we're not even going to remember it. But for those of us who are still doing Pilates the way, we learned it and the way we are experiencing it and stuff like that, that shit ain't gonna change. It
Mm.
was Pilates before hot Pilates, gonna be Pilates during hot Pilates, gonna be Pilates after hot Pilates. And it's not anything different. And so, those are my feelings about it. Now, again, I'm not mad if any of my own students decide they want to
Yeah, it
teach
is
hot
what it
Pilates.
Well,
is.
I
yeah,
might have a
Yeah, it is what
conversation
it
do
with them.
is.
you.
But
Yeah.
that's, yeah, but I do want you to know that eventually this trend right here, child, we ain't gonna
Yeah.
remember that stuff. You're
Well,
gonna
and
be
I
Yeah.
back
think
to doing
I
Pilates what
think
we were
the
doing
trends
before.
are pretty heavily based in misinformation, right? We've been led to believe that if we're sweating heavily, we are getting a better workout. When in fact, we
Mhm,
know that that is just our body's attempt at maintaining equilibrium. And
mhm,
actually, if we are severely dehydrated, we don't have the resources within our body to actually have optimal muscle movement and breathing patterns and stuff like that. So I think as the science becomes more in the forefront, some of these
mhm,
trends may go away. And yes, as somebody who suffers with like, well, perimenopause is one thing, but also like orthostatic
Yeah.
issues,
Dysautonomia,
all of
POTS,
that stuff,
heat
you are not going to
intolerance.
catch my ass in a hot anything class because I don't have to move much at all for my system to already be revved up. And Joseph Pilates built those into his system, the hundreds.
This is
That
what I
that
was
will
going to
get your
say.
body warm, I promise.
The
You got it.
100 is the heat. It is the
Yeah.
warm up.
Truly, that's what it
And
is.
I'm kind of
Yep,
a
that makes
like, yeah,
sense.
I think like if you really want heat, like the world is heating up. Every year more people are dying of stroke, I mean of heat stroke. No, like let's be real, climate change is really affecting people in some of these some areas that there's just, it's worse. It is.
Yeah, we
And we're
don't
taking
need to add the
medications
heat.
We don't
that
need
make
to
us
add to
more
it.
prone to heat stroke. Like,
Yes,
and
absolutely.
And I think people who think they're healthier than they are sometimes because of how they look, because people think health equates to appearance. And COVID affected all of us more than we realize. So many more people are out there with heart issues than they realize and stuff going on. Why push it? We have more high school athletes and college athletes dropping dead than like ever before of like heart issues and all sorts of stuff. People who everyone thinks these are the ultimate athletes. People think they're the healthiest people ever, but they're overworking themselves and they're also not getting great coaching sometimes. And so I think we have to remember that there's a sickness in our society of overdoing it. Productivity. It's related to Protestantism. This idea that you should work till you die. And so many people do because that's how the system's set up. And so I think taking time to slow down, take your time to learn Pilates, take your time to do it at your own pace is a radical act, even if it doesn't sound like it is. It truly is because, and if you're in a group class and you're moving at your own pace, like that's a radical act because so many people rather just appease and try to fit in. It's so much harder to be like, well, actually, I need to take care of myself in the moment. And we're not equipped to do that. We have to be prompted, you know? And I truly believe like if you have those abilities, share them with other people because you can foster that in them and really encourage them to do something they never thought they would do. Like I never thought I would teach Pilates. I literally did everything I could in school to get out of fitness and like really hard, like got kicked out of classes. Like I tried so hard and I teach Pilates and it's the most invigorating thing that I've ever done. I have a degree in something else in a career and I every day would like to readjust into something that I'm really passionate about. Because if you use a push through bar, I'm sorry, it changes everything. Use a push. Oh my gosh. You have like a moment and you're like, this is how I could feel. Sorry. It's just like, everyone deserves that.
Real.
And everyone deserves that option. There should be in every school, like elementary public schools, we should have a Pilates room. I couldn't imagine. I was in so much pain as like a kid.
I wish we had so much. I wish we had access to different forms
And
of
that's what
movement
Joseph
as
wanted.
kids instead of here, run a lap and also swim in this pool. And oh, by the way, you're fat and you have scoliosis. See you next year. Like
if you
that's
cannot
the school.
reach this far, then I'm sorry, but you get a failing grade because you, the presidential fitness.
But this is the look, people claim to be doing things like Joseph, but Joseph ultimately wanted everyone to have access to physical fitness that worked for their body. And he did tailor some of the work and even sometimes building apparatus for a specific body. So every time someone says that Pilates should be done one way, I'm sorry, blasphemy. I'm not religious.
Okay.
Blasphemy.
Yeah. And sorry to anyone that does have religious trauma, but when you said so anyway, when you said that Pilates was the same yesterday and today, all I could think of is it's just church stuff, you know, Jesus yesterday, the same today and tomorrow. So that is the vibe, guys. Pilates is it's just like Jesus, yesterday, today, and forever. Okay?
Welcome to church.
So welcome to church. This has been your sermon. I hope you feel cleansed of all of your fitness sins. Okay. We are connected to our breath. We have been purified. We are connecting to our breath. We're letting the rain wash over us. Okay. And ease us of all guilts and poor judgment when it comes to thinking movement has to be punishment and sweaty and skinny and lean and long. Okay. We are sanctified now. Amen. Amen. That's it. Thank you for joining the live stream. If you didn't join the live stream, thank you for joining the recording. Wherever you are, let us know how this episode landed for you. But that's gonna be it. It's a wrap.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks for hanging out and listening to the Movement for Everybody podcast. You can find the book by its same name at major retailers, independent bookstores, and your local library. Be sure to follow me at Move with Marcia on all the socials and say hello sometime.